Hey, Wolfpack. I knew you would go live right when I took a sip of tea. How are you? Angela Wolf here. It is so nice to be with you. This has been a really busy week of live shows. So if you've missed some of the others, on Monday we had Valerie Martelli with her two beautiful daughters showing off her tables and all of the accessories, which they gave the Wolfpack a great discount that's good till Sunday. So you might want to go catch that episode if you missed it. And then yesterday we were live on Brothers Sewing Channel, and I don't know, I am so addicted to playing on Artspira with the print moda. Of course, I'm a Brother Brand ambassador, but that doesn't mean you have to use everything they have. But this thing is so much fun. I'm actually making fabric from taking photos of my leaves. Go figure. But it's turning out pretty cool. And so today we are back to our last episode of our tweed skirt, and I'm really grateful for that because I'm really ready to wear this. And I'm loving it so much, I'm definitely going to have to make a jacket. I haven't made a Chanel style jacket for a while, and as I'm making this skirt and how it feels like a sweater, it's so soft, like pajamas. I remember why I love making these jackets and these skirts. So today, I'll show you what I've done so far. I couldn't wait. So I did do a lot of the hand stitching over the weekend. We're going to finish up the hem, show you what I did with the zipper, and attach the waistband. So one thing about the waistband, when you have a tweed, I don't like a lot of bulk. So there's a few different ways you could do this, but I'll show you the way I'm going to do it. And there's going to be some beautiful lining on the inside touching your skin, so you hardly even feel the tweed. All right, before that, speaking of tweeds and knits, hey, Chloe, did you get my email yesterday? Be sure to check it and send me a note back. Okay, fabric stash sale. I've got a load of fabric that we have unloaded, and we're dividing it into 2 or 3 sales. It depends how long. I just want the sale to go 1 hour, but there's a ton. So at the end of today's show, I'll give you a little preview. You know me, I couldn't wait. So I've already washed 4 colors ready to roll. But there are some beautiful tweeds that have some sequins, easy to sew through sequins. That's important. Especially for the holidays. There's red, there's navy, there's black. If you have the Angela Wolf Patterns app, probably got a notification over the weekend about some of the fabrics. I've already added them to the website, so at least most of them. So if you want to take a preview of what's new and be ready for the sale, the stash sale is on Friday at 2, if I'm correct. All right, how are you all? Nice to see you, nice to see you. Well, let's get rolling. I already have the lining on the table in the back, and I've already hand stitched most of the skirt. Susan, the red has your name on it. The red is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. It screams, for me, New Year's Eve, because I don't wear a lot of red, but on New Year's Eve and Valentine's, I always wear red. So that's what I'm thinking with the red. But the black and navy are definitely in my in my wheelhouse. All right, so you ready to go, guys? And I can see all of your comments and questions, so I will take breaks to take your questions in between. Oh, I see somebody asking about the cardigan behind me. Yeah, so this is what we've been working on in the Fashion Sewing Club. So this is the cardigan. I'm just finishing up the neckline. In fact, maybe you all could vote for me. So in Fashion Sewing Club, I taught them how to copy your favorite cardigan pattern because they always fit so good, don't they? And now I'm debating for the neckline if I should do, you can see how the stripes kind of go up and down, and I'm thinking of doing the neckline with the stripes going sideways. Do you like that or not? I don't know, I think it just adds some to it. Now I kind of wish I had done the pockets sideways to kind of match that, but too late, they're already sewn in. So a lot of those sweater knits that I bought can either be, well, of course, the ruche tee is my go-to, and changing it to a V-neck is definitely perfect. And then I'm thinking a couple cardigan sets. That's been my go-to forever. And why change what you know you're going to grab every single morning? The other style that I'm kind of playing with a little bit is a little bit of a hoodie. So not a hoodie that I'd wear to the gym, but since every morning I'm grabbing a tank and a hoodie to wear out the door, why not do it out of a luxurious sweater knit? So that's what I'm going on. Well, what do you got for me, Darlene? You want to know what town I'm in? St. Joseph, Michigan. That's where I'm at, Darlene. Yeah, at least most days. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, so let's go sew. Bring this up here. And I'll just take some of these little banners down so it doesn't. Oh, Karina says you like it sideways. I do too. I think it looks kind of cool that way. All right. Get all this off of here so I can see you. Here we go. Let's head to the table and see what we have. So we're going to be sewing, ironing, cutting, you name it. I've got a lot going on here for you today. So first of all, I've laid out my lining and I need to cut a piece for the bottom of the, I would say the bottom edge of the waistband. I've got a fun way to do this. I don't like a thick waistband for tweeds, but I do like the feel of silk. So first I'm just going to kind of even this out and cut a strip. There we go. And we'll see how sharp my rotary blade is today. Jeff, if you watch this, you probably wonder, what in the world do you do all day that you keep going through blades like there's no tomorrow? Well, truth be told, I use some of these for paper, for cutting patterns, and I should put stickers on them, but I didn't. So, self-inflicted. All right, so this should be enough. If not, I can make a longer layer. I didn't measure the waist, but in fact, let's just see. So here's the waistband. Of course, I could use the pattern, but I never do that for a waistband. I just lay out what I've got. So we'll measure across the waistband. Oh yeah, plenty of room. All right, so I have this, and then I have a piece of tweed that I walk over. Oh, I walked over to the table with it. You also need interfacing. This is just fusible interfacing. The width of your skirt. I always cut mine a little bigger, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. And then I have a piece of tweed, and we'll bring it over to the ironing board. Oh, thanks, Anne. I like the lining too. Oh, you're right, Susan. That does kind of look like traditional knitting. I don't know. I wore, I've already been playing with this one, and I almost wore it today and only have half the collar pinned in just to see if I liked it. Hey, Anne, this is the fringe skirt, but I'm not using the fringe at the bottom. It's fringeless, and I made it a little longer. All right, let's head to the ironing board. So if you've been following along, this is basically our last lesson for this. Just make sure you're not too bright on here. Here you go. So what I did over the weekend without you, which I walked you through earlier, this is one of the side seams right here. You'll never be able to see it, right? Because that's really good hand stitching. So it's all quilted, and then I hand stitched this side. Let's go to this side, and you'll see a little bit how I did that. I'll go up and down for you. So I'll remove a couple pins, even though it's all nicely pressed and pinned. The bottom layer here, if you look close, there's the raw edge. I hand tacked that right to the seam. So there's an actual tacking that goes right to the center of the seam. Then I took this side of the lining, pushed it over, and pressed the edge where this folded edge of the seam is right along that seam. So there's actually a seam right there. So when you say you can't see it, that means I did a good job. And then I just pin this right to the seam, and then you can see what I've done to the hem. So first of all, this side is all finished. This side, I left open so you could see what it looks like. First, you turn the hem up, which is right here, and hand stitch that in place. Then you fold the lining, and I always lay this nice and flat. Now, if you were doing a bagged lining, usually you'd have maybe the hem up here and have a little bit of extra room for this to move. But because it's all quilted, I can hand stitch it flat right to a certain part inside the hem. So as you can see, the quilting goes to about here. You probably can't see it, but I'll tell you. And then I folded up the hem and I'm hand stitching it right to that area. And then for this piece here, I'll just fold over that lining so it looks finished. Kind of like a little puzzle piece. So all of this is ready to be hand stitched. The only thing I want to double check is that it's even all along the same area inside the hemline. I'm a super perfectionist about that. So I'll double check that that matches. And from the outside, it looks wonderful, doesn't it? All right, up here on the zipper side, and I'll bring you a little darker just so maybe you can see a little better. Here's the zipper. As you can see, this side I've already hand stitched. Now last week I showed you how to make that little corner, tuck it back, and I hand stitched there. This side here, if I take a couple of the pins out, I did the exact same thing where here's the corner. I snipped right to the corner and then pressed it back. Again, you do have to use a lot of pins for this just to keep everything. You want to make sure that everything lays flat before you start hand stitching because you don't want to do it over. And this would be the point where you try the skirt on and make sure it fits. And guess what? I did, and it fits beautifully. So my last hand stitching inside here is just along the zipper, going all the way down, and then finishing the hem on the one side that I'm not done with yet. But I can still go ahead and get started with the waistband because I prepped a few things just so I could do this with you live. So if I go to the front side of this, let's go to the center front. I'll leave the zipper open just so you can kind of have some visual of where we are. Remember, my lining is bigger. I cut it bigger than each piece. So I've already gone through and stitched right along the top edge, securing the lining to the edge of the fabric. Now, there's a couple ways I could have done this. I could have left that open, put on my waistband, and then tucked my lining over the waistband. But I don't find that to look as nice as the way I'm going to show you today. So now that I've stitched, I've got all this excess up here. Go ahead and cut this off. I'm not going to cut the tweed. I'm just cutting the lining. And the reason that I stitched right along the top to make sure this was all secured is otherwise this lining can get real wiggly. And all of a sudden, the lining's shifted and then you can't figure out where you're supposed to sew. One of those things, right? All right, all the way across here. Making sure I'm only cutting the fabric. I don't want to accidentally cut my ironing board or cut too much off the skirt. All right, and then this. There. That looks good. Throw my trash out. So there's the top of my waistband. And it's all ready for me to add a waistband. And you can see how my back goes higher. This is my personal fitting. My front's a little bit lower. Now you want to check out where's the center front. So if I were to close my zipper up and find my, wait, we did a really good job sewing this because I can't even hardly find the seams. There's a seam and there's a seam. So my center front is right here, which is right down this black marking here. So the reason that I cut my waistband way longer than we need, because I can adjust for measuring and matching up my plaids. All right, so if I were to start, there's my zipper. And I'm just eyeballing this because we'll get it perfect later. That matches. So now let's just measure all the way around the skirt. I do not put a side seam on my waistband. It goes all the way around. And then when I get to the other side of the zipper, give yourself a little extra. We'll cut it off later. All right. So that's the waistband. Here's the lining and the interfacing. So let's go ahead and attach the interfacing. If I can remember which side, I should have marked this. That's the wrong side. They look so similar. It's really hard to determine. In fact, I think if you sewed either way, it really wouldn't matter. I'm just making sure. Okay, so if you're not using an iron shoe, make sure you use a press cloth of some sort. You don't want to get all this gook on your iron. So this is fusible interfacing. And when you use this, the bumpy side faces down, the rough side. I can't tell you how many classes I've been in, teaching or viewing, where there's at least one person that presses this on the wrong way, and then it will stick to your iron. So I'm giving it some steam. This interfacing is interfacing that I use. It's on my website. There's a few different kinds, but it's the Fusin-It. And if I give it just a little steam, it really helps it secure onto that tweed. Again, you're just lifting and pressing. Don't go like this. You'll end up with a gooky mess. And no, I did not go all the way to the edge because remember, we're cutting off some of that anyways. I think putting interfacing on is probably the most boring part of making an outfit, especially if you're doing a tailored jacket, because you've got a ton of it. What's my favorite part of the jacket? Oh gosh, probably embellishing. Although I love the quilting, the fabric, but I love the embellishing. Adding a little embroidery, adding some trim, crochet, you name it. Now I've cut this piece wider than I'm going to use. I think this was about 3 inches wide. I can double check for you. All right. I see somebody asking. I cut this 3 inches wide. It's just a good base. All right. Making sure that's all on there real good. All right, you don't need the lining yet, so put that to the side. And go back to your skirt. And where is that center front mark? There's my pin right here. I'll face it this way. There's my center front. So I want to make sure that I have enough to get to the side and then some, which that's plenty. And then line up. What I'm doing is I'm matching the pattern on my waistband with that center front. And that looks like it's right there. Now, one thing, if I have a lot of extra fabric, except some of these fabrics can get a little pricey, I've cut the waistband on the bias before, and that's really pretty. It really looks nice. But if you cut your waistband on the bias, it does take a lot of fabric. So I chose to not do that this time. Especially because most of my waistband is going to be the lining. And because this is a straight edge here and it's not a curve, I don't need to cut the silk on the bias either. I could cut it on the straight of grain. You could cut it on the straight or the lengthwise grain line. Either one would be fine. So I'm just sticking a few pins in here to make sure that, wow, we're getting pretty lucky. Now we're getting into the dart area, which technically this waistband should not match anymore. So if it does, that's just a bonus. So when you pin on your waistband, you want to ease your skirt fabric just a little bit. So your waistband should be a little tighter than your actual skirt. So let's go back to the front where that lined up. And if I really wanted this to line up even more, I could do that. But when you have the darts, it really gets a little complicated. So just making sure that this is eased just a little bit. And then when it gets close to the zipper, remember there, right there, is the edge of our zipper. So I've got this much room, which is about 1/2 of an inch, which is where I normally have the bottom of my waistband. All right, that looks good. The only other thing I did not check is after I trimmed this to make sure that my zippers, the top of my zipper area of the fabric lines up correctly. I hear the lawn going. It's been raining all day, so that's got to be not a fun job today. Okay, so I want to double check right here. This is one spot. You really want to make sure. So when this is zipped up, do these match? Wow, they sure do. I just want to make sure they're a nice flat seam, that they don't angle up, because that never looks good when you're sewing. All right. There's one pin, and then we've got the other side. So if I were to just gently lift this up, a lot of the front is lining up. Go to the sewing machine and stitch this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, any questions before we go sew? I'm just double checking. Hey, Chris, it's great to see you too. Making sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, you're going to love that skirt. It'll match your Blair jacket really nicely too. All right, any last minute questions? No. So let's go back to the sewing machine. You guys are pretty easy today. All right. I hear the lawn. It's not our lawn, so I guess I don't know where it's coming from. Of course, it's during our live show. So starting with the waistband side, using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and just a straight stitch. When I get started right where the zipper is, I usually use the hand wheel just to make sure, just in case I measured incorrectly or I'm just off by just a smidge. I don't want to break my needle. And I know that invisible zipper will not break your needle usually, but in the past it's happened. And it scares the heebie-jeezies out of you. What's that word? My sister uses it. Well, there's another word for it that, like, that's only a few letters, but I was going to refrain from using that today on the live show. But it does scare you to death. I'm just always about be a little safer than sorry, right? All right, stitching all the way around. So I'm attaching the waistband to the full skirt and lining and everything down at the bottom. Okay. Not the lining piece we cut, but the part that you've quilted so far. When I mentioned that I cut my waistband 3 inches wide, that's just usually my go-to. It's either a 3 inch or 4 inch, depending on what I'm sewing. But with the tweed, I like it to be a little bit smaller. And I might even cut more of it off by the time we're done. I always like to see how it looks, how it feels, before I make it even smaller. All right, and I can feel my zipper on this side, so I don't have to worry. Okay, so there's the waistband. Let's see the center front. There's the center front. That matches beautifully, doesn't it? And then after that, I'm not going to worry about it because with the darts and the curve of the waistband, it's not going to match anyways. Now, if you did it on the bias, it would be pretty cool. All right, here we go. Yeah, so for the Fashion Sewing Club, we have our a live show tomorrow, and I'll finish the cardigan with you, the cardigan lesson. That's been about our last month's lesson. I'm going to bring you back just a little bit so you can see a little more of the ironing board. And then I get to see what you've been working on. But I'm thinking a black cardigan with this is going to be beautiful. Kind of casual. I could also dress it up if I wanted to. So what am I doing now? I'm pressing up the hem allowances. And I do it on a ham because your waist is curved, right? A little steam. Use a tailor's clapper. There you go. All right, now I like to go from the right side and make sure there's no crevices or creases make sure that your waistband is all the way up. None of this going on. So the lining is actually going to be on most of the inside of the waistband. I don't like anything scratchy. Not that tweeds are scratchy, but they can be a little bit. All right, so we've got the whole outside pressed. Now, turn it inside out again. And we only have a 1/2 of an inch marking here. When I turn under my waistband, the 1/2 inch, I just want to see how wide this waistband, if it'll look okay. And this is why I always start with larger, because I could fold it up to an inch if I wanted to. I know it's probably a little tricky for you to see that this is the waistband because the plaid's lining up so nicely. So there's my seam allowance. I'm just flipping over my fabric and I'm going to press right along that edge. So I'm just enclosing the seam allowance here. And I can literally use the edge of, or the marking on my fabric as the guide. So it looks like it's just above this whole black row here. All right. Oop, there's one little thread. It almost looks like down here, did I not use as big of a seam allowance? Oh, I did not. So from here, you can see how there's more white right here. From here to here, I need to make it just a little bit wider seam allowance. It's not quite a half of an inch. Let's go back to the sewing machine. You're probably thinking, is it really that important? Yes, it is. Oh, and yeah, there's a ton of videos in the Fashion Sewing Club. So you had the cardigan. Let's see, what else did we do? We did the skirt for a while. That was a fun one. I can actually see on here where my seam was crooked. It's what I get for watching the TV with you versus just sewing. There we go. Back to the ironing board. Oh, I see somebody asking about Beverly. Hey, Bev, I think she's on here today because her surgery got moved to tomorrow. So no news on Beverly yet. And Beverly, if you're watching like you were yesterday from the waiting room, just know that you have people in the wolf pack asking about you. Such a great group. We always check out for each other. All right. That's much better. Much better. And now I'll go back and press this just back a little bit. And now it's looking the way it was supposed to look. So this really looks nice. I like this thinner waistband. I think it's going to be fine. This is different than when we did all the skirts in Fashion Sewing Club where I used the 2 and 3 inch elastic on those. This is different. It's a whole different feel of a garment as well. All right, so that looks wonderful. You've got the excess. We'll be cutting that off later. So now what? Well, I really don't want my waistband to be that long on the inside, right? But I want to cover up most of it with silk. So turn your skirt inside out. And you can start at either end. It doesn't matter. Why don't we start at this end here? Got my silk right here. So the silk, I cut this 2 inches wide. So I want to have a finished edge at the top. So if I start, and I'll just put a couple pins, you can see what this looks like. And you want to start past the zipper so it's finished all the way. And I can use, again, the trim or the print on my fabric as a guide. I'm just going to put a couple pins just to flip it over and show you what I'm doing here. And then you'll go, oh yeah, I get it. Right, let me grab my pins off of my sewing machine. So basically this is, if you have a right side and a wrong side with your lining, this is right sides together. Okay, if that is your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then once it's sewn, you flip this over, what do you see? Well, if this is your waistband and this is the top edge of your waistband, the lining is going to cover most of your waistband. And the waistband isn't going to be that long anyways, but at least I like to keep extra fabric. I've had it before where I accidentally cut a little bit short and I was very disappointed in myself. I'm going to make it a little closer to the top edge. Again, just using a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. You don't need anything special. All right, so if I sew that and then flip it over, now I'm right on that top edge. Just so barely anything's going to be touching my skin. So I can see, I don't need to pin this whole thing. You want to start where you've got some of the lining over in the zipper side, or outside the zipper side, I should say. And this is such an easy pattern to follow. So as long as I just do a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then just keep lining the fabric up with that edge, I should be fine, right? Okay, so again, right sides together. If I open my entire waistband up, I've got the piece over here. We're going to stitch through here and then flip it over and press. If you've never done this, after you try it, you will probably never want a regular waistband again. And you want to know? Because it's so soft against your skin. I'm all about comfort, but I'm also, when you go back to wearing some of the nicer clothes that we were wearing pre-COVID days, I'm still about comfort, but comfort and style. All right, so just lay this flat, take the lining, I'm lining it right up along that, and 1/4 inch seam allowance. Basically, the edge of my presser foot is right there. We'll do the trimming at the very end. Oh, that was way crooked. I'll be doing 2 rows of stitching here because that was really crooked stitching. Yeah, you probably wouldn't notice it was crooked until you go flip this back over and you're trying to press it and the pressed edge looks a little wonky. That's when you know you weren't paying attention. All right, so now that I have that down, the first time I'm going to do 1 more row of stitching because back here I was like all over the map. Okay. Much better. I don't know, lining up the edge of the fabric along there, staring at the camera, and sewing. I don't know what possibly could go wrong with that. Okay, so you can see there's my waistband. This is the top edge of my waistband right here. And then we'll fold the lining back. So let's go back to the ironing board because you definitely need to press now. So there's a few extra steps I do. Here you go. Yep, now any of this itchy fabric, it's not itchy. I probably shouldn't use that word because it's not itchy. It's just rougher than silk. And when you have silk all over the inside of your skirt, you're going to want it on your waist too. So I'm just flipping my lining towards the edge of the waistband, the outer edge of the waistband. All right, looks pretty good. And now we're going to just go do one top stitch right along the edge of that silk, because if you picture, when the waistband is pressed closed, there's the closed waistband, there's the inside. And if you just do a row of stitching here, it's almost like a stay stitching. It'll keep it in place. All right. Again, I'm just stitching right on the edge of the lining. After this, that's where you need to decide how much of the tweed you want left inside of your skirt. Probably not a lot, but you need enough to keep your waistband stable. Okay. There's the stitching right along there. And now when the waistband is folded in, so there's your waistband, that's all tucked up into the waistband, and fold it down, and look at how nice that looks. So the next step is to decide how much of this extra tweed do you want in here. We're not tucking it back under. I just think that's too bulky. So if we cut it, then I can take this fabric and wrap it around the bottom edge as well. So let's go back to the ironing board. That's probably an easier place for you to see this. And because I left myself a little extra fabric on both sides, that gave me a chance to take a look at the skirt and say, hey, does this, how big is this waistband when it's all finished? About 3/4 of an inch. Does that look okay? Does it feel okay? Does it look nice? Or did I need it bigger? So that's totally your choice. I like the way this looks. So now, from the inside of the skirt, if I flip back the silk, I really don't need the tweed to go any further than just underneath of our previous seam, just so I can do a stitching to hold that in place. So let's go back to the side I would probably start cutting from, which would be here. And whatever I start cutting, that's what I'll do the whole way. So I can easily use the fabric as a guide. All right, so there's the top edge of the waistband. Here's my zipper. You can see that. If I flip this over, I really don't need my tweed to go about right there. Okay, which is basically I'm cutting off one edge of my trim. Not quite an inch. About 3/4 of an inch I'm cutting off. Don't cut your silk. You need that. So this is just trimming off of the waistband here. Because now I can take the silk, wrap it around the other side, and see how that will finish that edge so nicely? All right. Getting the silk out of the way. So if any of you are sewing this skirt, make sure you go into the Angela Wolf Patterns group and post photos, because I love seeing everyone's variation of their tweeds. And then after you see some of the tweeds from the fabric stash sale, you might want to add more to your repertoire. Okay. All right, so I was able to use basically, again, the print as a guide for cutting. Now lay your skirt flat. There's a lot of pressing involved here. Did you notice that? Flip your lining over the edge and then press that all the way. So the silk is pressed to the wrong side. So once my waistband is flipped over, look at that. There's the right side. There's the wrong side. Talk about comfortable, luxurious. And because the waistband, again, is straight, I did not need to cut the silk on the bias. There was no need to do that. All right, now when we flip this over, I can stitch from the right side, right inside the ditch of the waistband and secure that. I could also do it by hand if I wanted to, which I probably won't. So let me just bring this around to the right side so we can kind of check out what we're going to do at the zipper area because we don't need all this excess here. So if I put a pin right there, I know it's a little tricky to see. On the back side, the stitching will be right there. So there's plenty of room where there's a little extra here, which is totally fine. And there's no raw edges underneath because we wrapped it with silk. I like to pin this in place before I start sewing because it's amazing when you start sewing how this tweed and the silk underneath can start to maneuver a little bit. And you're like, wait a minute, I did not want that. Okay. So why do I leave that little extra length inside? Well, once I wrap it with silk, it's just going to lay flat. And it's a nice buffer between that and your silk. Does that make sense? Make sure that I'm pinning this waistband straight. I'm not going to sew the whole thing with you here because we're running out of time, but I will show you how I'm going to finish it at the zippers. And then all that's left is some more hand stitching at the hem, and I'm ready to wear this. Up to tell when. Hot date Friday night. I've only been wearing jeans lately. He'll probably think if I dress up with this and a pair of black boots and a black sweater, he's going to think that there's a funeral. That was supposed to be a joke. Yeah. Okay. This is really looking nice. So on the back side, I can see exactly where my stitching's going. So if there's anything that doesn't look just right. From the front side, if I stitch right here, and then the last thing I want to check is just make sure I'm following those press lines for the top of my waistband. So once this is sewn, again, see when it kind of flips back? You won't be able to see any raw edges. And so now, instead of having 2 layers of that tweed, which makes the waistband pretty darn bulky, I just have the seam allowance and this 1 layer and 1 layer, and it really lays nice. All right, let's go to the zipper part. See what we got there. So let's see, mine is, I always have to think, does my zipper go on? Yeah, it's on the left. So I like to leave, I don't like to have my zipper just butt up on the side because sometimes you'll get a little gap there. So instead, I always like to have 1 layer that's a little longer than the other. And it's usually the front going to the back. So if this is my front, I'll go ahead and just trim this here. And if this is my back side, trim it here. Now, how to sew these and make sure they line up. Yeah, they line up great. For the back one, just flip this backwards. That's it. And you'll stitch from here to here. And for the front one, you're going to stitch backwards, but this time you'll stitch further out. Making sure that looks pretty good. What I'm checking is just to make sure that I'm folding it on the back side right at the top of the waistband, which is right there. So when you're stitching the back side, you want to stitch just away from the zipper about 1/8 of an inch. Don't do it right at the zipper, because then when you tuck it right side out, it tugs towards the garment, which you don't want that. And then for the front one, again, I'm going to remove just a couple pins to make sure this is straight. This one will stitch out further. All right, let's go stitch it and see what it looks like. Joanne, are you with me? No place, all dressed up and no place to go. I used to, in the old days, dress up to work like maybe 2 days a week. But I told myself I'm going to start doing that again. That'll be our date night. Well, every night's a date night, but okay, so this is the front. So I'm going to stitch over here a little bit further. Bring you in just a little closer so you can see what's happening there. Okay, so that was the front edge, which is a little bit further out, and now just flip it to the right side. Tuck in that seam allowance and see how nice that looks. And it's over just a little bit past the zipper, because then I can put a hook and eye here. All right, now this side is the back side. And if you didn't see how I flipped it, go back and watch the replay. Oops. No, I need my fingers. It came unthreaded. Hold on. Which I can do that with one hand. Oh, don't you love your needle threaders? Yes. Okay, try that again. Again, I'm stitching just a little ways, about 1/8 of an inch away from the actual zipper. Because when you go to flip all this bulk inside, so my stitch line is about right there, not right up atop the zipper. So before I trim, I always just flip it right side out and make sure it looks okay. That looks nice. Now trim. These scissors might be a bit overkill for this part. All right, got a few little threads there too. Might as well get rid of those. Now take the edge, flip it right side out. Bring you out just a little. So that's the back side. I'll go ahead and put another pin in there, because now we're going to stitch just along the edge. It's basically stitching in the ditch. I'm not stitching on the waistband. I'm stitching just underneath that seam. Okay, that side looks good. Zip up your zipper just to make sure. You always want to make sure that the top edges meet. All right, so this one, we just need to trim a little bit. This was the front, and remember, we have a little extra room there. Trim off all my little whiskers. Now flip this right side out. We'll give it a good pressing. Tuck in any extra seam allowance stuff. I like that one piece of tweed right there. Don't you hate it when you have something on your nail that catches, that one piece on your nail that catches everything? All right, so let's see what this looks like when it's closed. So there's the front. And then the back will just capture this. And I'll put a hook and an eye. So when it's totally closed, it's closed. Make sense? Yeah, that looks good. And they match perfectly. Wow, that looks nice. So there is just maybe 1/8 of an inch area here with my zipper. I could technically have gone a little higher, but there's so much bulk that I'm always very nervous about that. And then from the inside, you can see how big that is on the inside. And if that's too bulky for you, then go ahead and just trim the front edge to the same and have these butt up together, which is just as fine. Either one. I don't know. There's quite a bit of bulk there. I think I changed my mind. I think for this one, because there is so much bulk, I'm just going to sew it just like I did the back, right outside of the zipper. And then I'll use just 2 hook and eyes that just meet. I could always put one piece of little fabric or silk behind this. I'm not going to worry about it. All right, now flip to the right side and let's see what we got. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Voila. Okay, we're out of time, but I'm still going to stitch the waistband. So for those of you that have to go, our hour is up. It's been great hanging out with you, but now I want to stitch this. So I got to give it one more little pressing right by the zippers. Because if I don't stitch it, I'll get back here. Here you go. And now tonight, at least I can hand stitch the rest of my zipper area. Because this little part here still all needs to be stitched. Remember, I left this so I could show you what I did here. All right, let's see. Look at how good the inside looks here. This is called Luxury to the Hilt. Absolutely love it. So it looks very nice on the inside. There's your waistband area through here. All the rest of this looked pretty good already. Just make sure that the top edge looks the same throughout the whole thing. Yeah, pretty good. Yep. And then if the zipper's closed, there's that opening, and I can put just a couple hook and eyes here, and that will close that. All right, back to the sewing machine. We are just about finished. And if you have any questions for me, roll them in now. Thanks, Anne. She says, I'm in love with your skirt. I am too. The only issue is when you sew for yourself and you make something that feels this good, you're either going to want to wear it a lot or you better make a few more. People are going to think you never change your clothes. Okay, I'm right on the edge. If you have any problems stitching over that, don't forget about that black button on your machine if you have a Brother machine like this. Again, full disclosure, I am a Brother brand ambassador. I'm just bragging about one of the features I like. Okay. Again, I'm just stitching just below the waistband seam, which you'll have a hard time seeing that from where you are, but I can see it just fine. I see somebody asking, how many pieces of fabric for the fabric stash sale? Well, I'm splitting it up into at least 2 different sales because after an hour I get tired. Tired of holding it. I will give you a preview here in just a sec when we're finished. And we will be doing a test in the Angela Wolf Patterns group. So if you see something pop up later today or tomorrow, just know it's a test. And it'll say test on there too. You're not missing anything. Sale's not till Friday at 2. And then the next one is next week. Was it Wednesday? Wednesday at noon. Getting to the end. You can either do a back stitch or a stay stitch, whichever one you prefer. And let's see. Oh my gosh, look at how nice that looks. Oh, that's beautiful. There's the beginning. So again, it secured the bottom edge of my tweed, which you needed that to be able to have stability for your waistband. You couldn't just have just lining there. It wouldn't lay right. This really looks nice. And so no matter what you try to do underneath there, you cannot see the seam allowance. So the last thing I have to do is hand stitch where my zipper goes and hand stitch my hem. Voila. Of course, I got to put my label in there too. It looks wonderful. Okay, so hold tight. I'm going to give you a quick preview because some of you had said, what is happening? And you're going to just die when you see. I got a little carried away. Yeah, just a bit. So I'll bring a couple of the pieces over that I washed just so you can see. You know when it says hand wash on fabrics? Do any of you really do that, or do you just wash? Just curious. Yeah, that's part of the stash. Just part of it. All right, I'll take you back there. But do you have any questions about the skirt before we're done? Because the skirt's finished. All I have to do is a little more hand stitching, and it's out the door. Yeah. Thanks, guys. The waistband, the finished waistband is just over 1/2 inch. I think it was 3/4 of an inch is what it ended up being. The finished. After it was like flipped, that whole top edge was 3/4. Yeah, wash on cold. I do hand wash. I just wash. I know, Joanna. There's more. There's more. I know. Well, all I said was I would like some really nice tweeds and I would like some beautiful sweaters that feel like butter. And guess what? I got it. Okay, so I'll give you just a couple of previews. I washed. So I ordered a lot of black because that's like a staple in my wardrobe. But black doesn't always look good on camera. So I'm always trying to find colors that I can wear when I'm doing the live shows. So I don't even know the names of these. You'll have to wait to the fabric stash sale. But I washed this one. This reminds me, oh my gosh, it's so soft. This screams ruche tee with a V-neck. Has great stretch. So all 4 of these are the same fabric, but I just want to show you the colors. Aren't they beautiful? Now I washed these and I threw them in the dryer on low heat. And I wanted to see if it had nubs or anything like that, and it did not. Although I've noticed with a lot of my sweater knits, if I hang them to dry or air dry them, they last much longer. Here's another color. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, and 4 more. And then you'll have to wait. But this color, I think I cut 5 yards because I'm definitely going to have to make a couple things out of this. It has kind of like a ribbing on it, but isn't this beautiful? It's actually green. On the camera, it looks blue. It's a rich green. And this one is a blue. So this is what has first come out of my washer and my dryer. And maybe we'll see what I sew before tomorrow. You never know. So, all right, I'll give you a quick preview. There is, we're still unpacking. So I still have a ton more to do there. And then here are these bolts here that I've already taken stuff off of. So there's enough on each bolt that there'll be plenty to go around, but not too much where I get stuck with it, right? Karen, is that going to be the word that we say? So if you've never done a fabric stash sale, there's always a word you have to say. I'll make sure I put mine, mine, mine on one of them. Yeah, isn't that funny? It looked teal. No, it's like a rich green. I agree, Karina. Oh, you'd look good in that. That is definitely your color. And the blue, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So even if you don't have any room in your stash for more fabric, you'll still want to join the fabric stash sale. We have so much fun, a lot of good laughs. You never know who's going to be dropping the bolts of fabric. And, hi, Win. Come on in. I just showed the group all the fabric stash sale. And by the way, should we let them know? You have to be here at 2 on Friday to help. If you guys could see his face, you would laugh. All right. Any other questions for me? Otherwise, I'm going to call it a wrap. It's so nice to see you all. I got to run. And is the red orange or a red blue red? I would say blue red. That one's, but there's 3 other reds. I don't know. Susan, I must have been thinking of you after you left because there was a lot of red. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful day. Enjoy sewing your skirt and be sure to drop it into the Angela Patterns group so I can see what you're working on. Take you back here. Yeah, there's our skirt. What's the schedule for the rest of the week? Well, I kind of told you what Friday is. Tomorrow noon on Brothers Channel, I will also be on there showing, not just hosting, but showing another tutorial. I've got something fun planned for you using my design center. So those of you that are trying to learn more about your machine, that's at noon. At 2, we have Fashion Sewing Club, wrapping up the cardigan, and I get to see what you're working on. And then Friday at 2, Fashion Sewing Club. All right, everyone. You know how to find me if you need anything. Until next time, which might not be very long, but until next time, happy sewing. See ya.